What's going on, everyone? So, a lot of talk about Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger in particular. We got, the Blumhouse, Jason Blum recently was talking about how he wants to, do the Mount Rushmore of all the horror icons. That obviously got Michael and Halloween, but he'd love to do a second, kind of stab at that. He talked about how he wants to do a Jason movie. I don't think he's going to get the opportunity to do a Jason film anytime soon, just because we're getting another movie, we're getting the series, we're getting a video game. Like they have all kinds of stuff planned and pumped out, but maybe at some point. And then Nightmare on Elm Street, I really think Blumhouse would make a ton of sense for Nightmare on Elm Street. I really do think that style is really up their alley. I think, you think of like the franchises that they've had the most success with, like Blumhouse. I think of things like Insidious and, Paranormal Activity and like the kind of supernatural paranormal style things. You could bring in like a James Wan or something like that. I think that would be fantastic. Blumhouse and James Wan have always worked well together. But, nonetheless, right? Freddy is kind of the big point of topic because we're getting everybody. We'll have another Halloween film in no time. Just wait. Jason, like I said, there's a bunch of projects in the works, from games to series to films to all of that. So that'll be exciting. But then you got the Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street is in a very similar position to Jason, right? And Friday the 13th. Like, one side owns Friday the 13th, the other side owns Jason, and there's been conflicts over the years. Right? It seems like they've put some of the things aside, but not fully. And then you also look at, Nightmare on Elm Street. There's like 5 different hands that it is exchanged, and it's just a mess on who owns the rights to what, and what film, and what story, and what version of Freddy, and blah, blah. Well, guess what you're not doing while you guys are arguing? Not making money. So hopefully at some point, and Jason Blum himself has talked about how like every day he makes a bid for it. Like every day he's bringing it up. And I just think now would be a great time. Because again, you're getting all these horror franchises. You're getting another Scream movie. You're getting, like I said, a Jason film in the works, and a Halloween film will probably be, like I mentioned, right around the corner. And you're getting all these It series and all of these things. Bringing in Freddy makes a lot of sense, right? Bringing him into the fold makes a lot of sense, but we'll see how that goes. The big question is, who steps in for Robert Englund? Now, Jason Blum, if I'm not mistaken, he was the one that said he believes he can get Robert Englund back to do it. Just kind of basically have him film all the close-ups and things like that. I don't really know, but even if you were to do that, at some point you're going to have to replace Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, and that's probably the biggest hurdle. Right? Everything else, I think you could get done. Eventually the rights will be figured out, whatever. It's who's going to step in the shoes of Freddy Krueger. Because Freddy Krueger isn't just Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger is Robert Englund, just like Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. I mean, to this day, we haven't seen the phenomenon that we had with Freddy, where Robert Englund was doing talk shows and all kinds of like little interviews and press and all this stuff. Right? So you need to have a very specific type of actor that has the familiarity that can actually kind of carry on this franchise. And we got kind of an idea, and it's actually funny. I had somebody in my comments, I think it was either a live stream or one of the videos that I talked about. It might have been the video that I talked about the Jason Blum thing, but nonetheless, I got a comment that actually mentioned this, so which I think is kind of funny. But Chuck Russell on Jim Carrey playing Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, that would be great. Jim, in my opinion, could almost do anything if he puts his heart into it. For Jim to do it, we'd have to do something that has another leap in the Elm Street series. A little bit like what Wes did with his very meta New Nightmare. I think Jim would only consider it, and I'd only consider harnessing Jim if it was a bold new direction for Elm Street. So, again, Jim Carrey, right? Could he play the role? And part of me thinks yes. Part of me can't see it, right? For Jim Carrey, it's one of those things where I think I'd have to see it, right? Like, you think of the roles that he's played, and the comedic chops and all that stuff. And just, Freddy's always had that kind of comedic vibe to him. And so I do think that Jim Carrey, I do see, and I can I can envision a version of Jim Carrey's Freddy that is phenomenal. We've seen, like, what is it, number 23, where he can, be more dramatic and kind of shift into like a more darker role. We've seen, him kind of, like the Grinch, be able to emulate and do all these little facial expressions. Like, it would be very different, though, in my opinion. And different doesn't always mean bad. Different can be very good. And if you were to go a new direction and have a new approach to Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street, then yes, I do think Jim Carrey could absolutely play that role. It's just, again, he's one of those actors that when you think of him, you have a very specific thought. So it's hard to envision something that in many ways is the complete opposite of what he is used to and accustomed to playing. That doesn't mean he can't do it. It just means that it's one of those things, in my opinion, you have to actually, I need to see kind of pen to paper before, like, I think that there is a version of this where he is absolutely unbelievable and we're all like, wow, that was the greatest choice ever. And then I think that there's a version of it where it's like, yeah, it's just, he's not Freddy. It's not, right? He's more, a darker Grinch than he is Freddy, with all the facial expressions and all the different things, right? Like, which again, Jim Carrey, I mean, is iconic. The guy is amazing, right? Like, it's nothing against him. I would love to see it, but I just don't know if that, like, again, I would have my reservations about it being the right hit. But like in the interview talked about, you'd have to do a very different Freddy. Right? Like, it would have to be, you'd have to go a new direction. They don't want to do, if they bring Jim Carrey into the fold, they don't want to bring Jim Carrey into the fold as, like Robert Englund's Freddy. You'd be going like a different route, which again could work. Different doesn't always mean bad. Different has the potential to be very good. So if they can put together something to where, you have Jim Carrey, who we've seen him play more dramatic roles and darker roles and stuff like that, right? And I do think that there is the potential for him to be able to play that approach. And would he want to put on all the makeup and prosthetic? That's something you got to keep in mind too, because that was one of the things he hated about the Grinch. But like, because like I think of things like Cable Guy, where he was just like this weird psycho, right? Like, but is that Freddy? Is that darker to Freddy? Now, we also know Jim Carrey can be that, that method actor where, the man on the moon, where he just became, we've seen, like I mentioned, number 23, the Riddler and Batman. Right? Like, he's had versions where, or characters where it's like, okay, like you can see, a little bit of a darkness, a little bit of the villain side of things. But again, it's usually a little extreme comedic type of version. And so, again, can that translate to the way that you'd want it to translate on the, for the upcoming film, or whenever we get that film is? Like, would it translate to the point where, it would have the success you'd be looking for? Like, all those questions are things that I think would be very interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? First off, do you want a new Nightmare on Elm Street? Do you think like, nah, we've done enough of them, leave it alone? And then Jim Carrey. What are your thoughts on Jim Carrey potentially playing Freddy Krueger? Do you think that, like, yeah, he would knock that out of the park? Do you think like, nah, like I can't envision it? Like I said, I have a hard time envisioning it, but that doesn't mean he can't. It's just, again, we all have this kind of thoughts and an idea of what he is as an actor and just the roles he's played, but it doesn't mean he can't step out of that. So anyway, again, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel. What are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.